Welcome back to Screenfish Radio. I'm so glad you could join us today. Episode 199. Episode 199 for Screenfish Radio. I'm so excited about this. Today we are talking about The Little Mermaid, and I have two of my favorite people here today to chat with us. I'm so glad to have Seun Olowo-Ake and Chris Utley. Welcome to you both. I am always thrilled to chat with you both. I'm really looking forward to this. Um, and as always, this podcast is rated S for spoilers. In case you're unaware, The Little Mermaid is the live action retelling of Disney's iconic animated property, which tells the story of Ariel, a young mermaid who makes a deal with a sea witch to trade her beautiful voice for human legs so she can discover the world above water and impress Prince Eric, the epic adventurer with whom she has fallen in love. As always, this podcast is rated S for spoilers. But to you both, let's just jump in. What did you think of this version of The Little Mermaid?
I loved it. I say loved, like I really actually loved it. I saw it twice in 2 weeks and I want to go see it again. And one of the times I saw it was in 3D because I just wanted to experience what it was like underwater.
What was it better?
No, it didn't feel that different. It felt the same. There were some moments where it was like, oh, like someone threw a spear and like I dodged, but that was it. But I really like the film. I think like I wrote in my review that this is my best live action remake that Disney's done. And I think probably all of us are tired of the remakes, like before this even came about. But I think I like this one specifically. Yeah.
But you were a big fan of the original.
Yes.
So now for myself, it's not that I didn't like it. I just was 12 when it came out, so I'm dating myself. And I just had a different experience. I was like, I was at that age. I didn't really care about it, but I know you loved it.
Yeah.
So that's a lot to live up to. How do you think it compared?
I was thinking about it today. I see them as two different films, which is interesting. Like I think the first time I watched this version, I was comparing it to the original, especially the songs, like Under the Sea and Kiss the Girl. I was like, oh, that sounds different. I don't like that. Um, but in terms of the story and the plot, like it's obviously a retelling, but this really, I think, sets itself apart from the original. And so I don't necessarily look at them as the same film. They're two different films in my mind.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Christopher, I always love having you on too. What'd you think?
Hey, my whole fully pronounced Christian name. Lovely. Bit of history as your resident screenfish. What am I? And
Film
what did I
analyst.
name myself?
Film analyst.
Film analyst. Everyone forgets, and really nobody ever brought this up in the press releases, which was interesting. But the original Little Mermaid came at a time when Disney was looked upon as small potatoes, and it has been as a company. They were still in that vein of holding on and shepherding to their animated classics with their plan to just keep re-releasing them all every 7 years to theaters, thinking that if we just see Snow White, Bambi, Dumbo, Pinocchio every 7 years, that will whet our appetite and that will give us all the feels for those Disney classics. Meanwhile, the company was taken over by the late Michael Eisner, who positions Jeffrey Katzenberg to run the film department for Disney. And Jeffrey Katzenberg's mission job one is to restore the glory and the luster of the animated unit. Because at the time, prior to Little Mermaid, They tried to revive it, but the stuff kind of crashed and burned. You get stuff like the Black Cauldron that wouldn't go anywhere. The sequel to the Rescuers that didn't go anywhere.
Great Mouse
Oliver
Detective.
and Company
Yeah.
that just stuff like that. So the Little Mermaid was like their big swing of the fence to try to return to glory, and it hit, and it hit big. And because of the Little Mermaid, that's why you've got Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and Lion King, and all the whole bumper crop of the new animated Disney classics that has helped propel that film unit to what it is now. Bottom line, you don't buy Lucasfilm, you don't buy Marvel, you don't have Disney Plus, you don't do any of that without the success of the original Little Mermaid that was the fuse that lit that whole nuclear warhead of Disney success. So it's interesting that in this, their centennial year, flashy logo to start the film and everything, they went back to the live action retelling of the one that kickstarted their fires back in '89.
Yeah.
So interesting thing to note there from a film analyst perspective. And they doubled down on that with their choice of Halle Bailey, an African American female lead. And as far as film content and how it was and what it was, I too saw it twice. I appreciated it the second time around. First time I saw it, I thought it dragged a little bit in the middle, but watching it again the second time, I was like, okay, they strung together a pretty decent and coherent story. The hero is a hero. Melissa McCarthy, who is one of my women crushes, lover, lover, lover. She was a good Ursula. Flounder was cute. Sebastian was cute. I forget the bird's name, but
Spell.
Aquafina, as that bird. She and Sebastian, voiced by David Diggs from Hamilton. They had a good rapport and a good banter back and forth. So it was enjoyable. I don't know if it's going to hit that pantheon of remake, animated to live action, all time classic, just on a film level. But the impact is sitting in other places. And we'll get to that as we discuss further. So that's my initial thought.
Yeah, I have to admit that I thought there's no way it was going to be good. I found like their greatest successes for these live actions things, and like you, Shay, I don't think anybody's really looking forward to them anymore in the same way. I think I've accepted them as reality, so it's sort of like, okay, it's the next one. But
I mean, what's left to do? I mean, I know Snow White's coming, but you can't live action Bambi. You can't live action Fantasia without a $500 million budget.
Yeah, they were working on Hunchback, and that fell through because they said it's too dark. And
oh God, that would be the most boring thing ever.
I love that animated film, but that's another story.
Yeah,
they're working on Hercules. I know that's another one, but again, like, see, I think their live action ones to me that been the greatest successes have been the ones that you remember the least on the whole, like Jungle Book.
Jungle Book was fire.
Jungle Book was really good. I think
Beauty and the Beast was good.
Okay, see, this is what Beauty and the Beast was good, but the Golden Years ones, I think they've really struggled. This is
not Aladdin, though, because slap aside, you know I had to go there.
Sure.
Aladdin was doggone fantastic. I was stunned at how good Aladdin was.
But of the four, and I would say
four?
of the big four: Lion King, Beauty and the Beast,
Lion King
Little
was
Mermaid,
trash.
and Aladdin. Yeah, but like this, that's sort of the big four. After that's Pocahontas,
Yeah.
and then Mulan, and then the golden age sort of gave away to like the animated Silver Age, which was not like they weren't the ones that people reference, right? So those were the four most important ones. And I think Aladdin was the best one because they took a few risks. The Lion King went totally the other
Because before you get to Lion King, remember Aladdin was all about there's no way you can duplicate Robin Williams. He is Genie. Period. Bringing Will Smith is just going to be a fail by comparison. But then they flipped it and let Will be Will, his interpretation of Genie, and that was absolutely the thing that made it work.
I agree 100%. That's actually what I'm saying. They took some risks while still it was still Aladdin. We knew what it was. We enjoyed it. We liked the songs, but it wasn't quite the same. The Lion King was deadly dull. And part of it is like they slept through it felt like they were sleeping through a reading of the script from 1994, and the animation was
You were
atrocious.
exactly right, and it's like the edit the because I get personal because Lion King to me is the greatest animated feature ever.
It's
I don't care
phenomenal.
what you got,
My favorite one.
Miyazaki. Spider-Verse might be number two when you're talking about Spider-Verse. Um, but you cannot sit. I mean, to sit there, it literally was, watching an emotionless, vaporless. Oh, I just can't wait to be king. It's like, really? No, this is not my Simba with all the life and all the joy in his face. No, no. As you said, it was just dry. It was just stale. It was just there. I don't understand why that movie made so much daggone money.
Because it's the Lion King, which I heard that they're talking about turning it
Yeah,
into.
no, they are doing the origin story. Mufasa
They are, but I heard
directed.
they're talking about making more,
Or
doing
what?
more of them.
Yeah, no, I didn't hear about stuff after that. I know that Barry Jenkins, director of Moonlight, is doing Mufasa, the origin
Really,
story of Mufasa, live action style.
Barry Jenkins
Look
is
at
doing
Shayu's face. I feel like I just traumatized you. I'm sorry. They're like, what? Yes, Barry Jenkins is working on Mufasa now.
it. Okay. Well, see, okay, and so you've got these two ends of the spectrum, and Beauty and the Beast to me is smack in the middle because it has its moments that I think are just wonderful, and then it has other things where I was just like, sure. And at the time, I liked it, but the more I've seen it, the more I'm like, it's fine. But it didn't. It's not one I sit there and say they crushed it. So Lion with Little Mermaid, it's such an iconic property. I was waiting for it to be, and I was like, they're gonna have to play it so safe that I was afraid it was gonna end up like The Lion King, is exactly what I thought. But
How are you gonna play it safe with a black girl as a mermaid and time to rip the band-aid off? Those segments of the population in their nonsensical outcry and outrage. If you want to talk about taking risks, Disney took the biggest risk of them all by going with Halle Bailey and her beautiful soprano voice and her dark skin in that role. Like, if they wanted to play it safe, they would have threw a whole bunch of money at Beyonce's daughter, Blue Ivy, or something, or Zendaya, or somebody like that. You know,
yeah, yeah, but and this is what I mean. So this, I think, to me, this version managed to capture the magical moments that it needed to, but it took some risks beyond Halle Bailey, and even though she's front and center, there's a number of risks that make it interesting to me. You know, other than Flounder. Flounder was a risk that did not make it interesting to me. although although Tremblay did a good job. The his voice works good. It's a horrifying look at a fish, but I mean, it's
Isn't
I
that kid
actually,
like 16 or something now?
yeah, but
Yeah.
it didn't matter for this. He's
But his voice, I mean, he voiced himself all the way back down to sounding like a kid.
He
So,
recorded it when he was much smaller, and then he aged while they were editing. So not
oh,
much.
okay.
oh really?
Yeah.
So they got him just before puberty, is what I'm
Yeah.
hearing Shay say.
Oh, okay.
They just got him in that window. Let's go, Ariel. Let's go, Ariel. Oh, we can't do a second take. I'm sorry. That's
You have to splice together cuts from all his old movies. It's like
that's right.
they stitched together his lines from Room to.
It's just a mad job in the editing room. He didn't have to do any recording at all. It was all him at the age of 9, and
Mhm.
but no, I actually thought it was. I was very impressed, and to me, the new things they added felt relevant. Like they didn't just throw in a bunch of things. I will say, as much as I loved the new songs, like I thought the Prince Eric song and the Ariel song were great. I thought the Scuttlebutt song was adorable, but I was like, it sounded a little, to me, this is just to me, sounded more modern because it was modern. It sounded it just a
Because
little out of place.
Manuel Miranda is one of the songwriters and he's billed as one of the producers in the film.
No,
I
I know.
totally knew that was his song.
Yeah, it sounds like
It
a
sounds
Lin-Manuel.
like something that he might have had the structure from Hamilton, but didn't make the final cut, so he repurposed it for this one.
But he also wrote the other new song, like the lyrics anyway, of the other songs as well, which sound different. Because I'm always like defending him because I really like the Manuel Miranda. I feel
I
like
wasn't hating on it. I'm just saying,
yeah,
the Scuttlebutt song totally is a dead giveaway that that's him.
yeah, it's very signature Manuel.
Yeah, and I actually really like this. All I'm saying is that of the 3 new songs, the 2 ballads fit, to me, fit the way that the music went better.
Yeah.
But I thought the Scuttlebutt song's adorable. It's fun. It's like it's a great scene. I have no beef with it. I could just tell it. I could tell more easily that it was a more modern song. The other ones sort of fit the pattern.
Stupid question from a 50-year-old man who hasn't seen The Little Mermaid since 1989. What was the other ballad that's new for this one? I know I pretty much caught the Prince Eric one, but what's the other new one?
I don't know what it's called. Oh, you would
We're
know.
seeing, we're seeing.
Well, the first time when she gets on land and she's singing in her head.
Yes.
That's new?
Yeah.
I didn't even catch that it was new. I assumed that it was part of the original. So there you go.
No, that's clearly the "Please Give Us an Oscar" song. That's what it. That was the.
Please give us an Oscar. Ain't
Uh,
nobody gonna remember that song next year. But okay. Sorry, Disney.
right now, it's between that and "Peaches" with Jack Black are the 2
Oh, Peaches
nominated.
better win. No contest. Game over. But go ahead.
Well, what I'd like to know from you both, it's interesting as we're having this conversation. Like obviously now Disney is not going to stop until they run out of like live actions to remake, which is why Moana is the experiment, because the rule was nothing after 2000. Although they're doing Lilo and Stitch as well, but like Moana is like 7 years old and they're redoing it. But Mike, I guess so.
You
Like
already know Frozen's coming in 2030. Just brace yourselves. I would be a grandparent taking my kid to see live action Let It Go.
Once they do Frozen 3, I think they'll do it. Like, because this franchise isn't over. There's no way it's over. The cast themselves.
Telling you, live action Frozen 2030. Book it. Whoever is the biggest pop star in the world at the time, that's who the heck singing Let It Go. Someone we don't know yet. She may be 11 years old, but that's who's going to be singing Let It Go in 8 years.
And we'll be hearing stories about how she sat in The Little Mermaid in 2023 and she dreamed
With a
that this
single
is what
tear
she wanted.
streaming down her eyes saying, one day that's going to be me.
There it is. But okay, so I have to ask you both what you think of this idea, because the truth is these things aren't going away. But is it necessary to do this? And I don't mean in general, because I think in general we would say, well, I can't speak for you. I would say in general probably not. But with The Little Mermaid, was it necessary to do it, or was it a more obvious cash grab to you, this way that The Lion King was? Don't everybody talk at once.
Necessary? Nah. But again, I don't think it was if it was a cash grab, then it would have been Ariana Grande, Doja Cat, or whomever playing Ariel. I don't know any of these pop stars nowadays. If they really wanted like super mega cash grab, they could have thrown $40 million at Taylor Swift and said, "Go. This will wipe the memory of cats from everyone's memory." And then we'd be sitting there talking about Little Mermaid crushes Memorial weekend with a $225 million opening because everybody would have gone just to see Taylor. That's cash grab. What they did from top to bottom, we were talking about Aladdin. I think they were trying to signify. Rewind. I think what they were trying to signify, again, this is their centennial, is that we were stepping into, borrowing the song from Aladdin, a whole new world. Because they didn't just double down, triple down, quadruple down. They threw everything with the kitchen sink to really say what they're having to say with the multiracial, multi-ethnic mermaids, with Javier Bardem, Spanish actor, as King Triton. With because you go with the trope in the Prince and Prince Eric, but his mom, the Queen, was black. That made me jump in the back of my seat the first time sitting in the theater. Like, what? And the trusted heir was because it's a trip, because I don't want to get his ethnic background wrong, but that actor, I remember he was the bad guy in Schwarzenegger's True Lies in '94, playing Middle Eastern, playing a Middle Eastern heavy who was trying to nuke Florida. But he's the trusted consigliere of the Queen. We have all these different images and all these different pockets, and when they're on land, it's a total festival and celebration of all these different pops of color, not just in the attire, not just in the scenery and the backgrounds, but in the people. It's a whole completely different world. And to me, I think what they were trying to say is, this is who we are as a people. This is globally what the world looks like. And we're choosing this particular film, this beloved classic, to represent and present what the world looks like today. Not your imagined, clung to fantasies of 1989 and times before, what the Little Mermaid was, what America was, what the world was back then. This is the world right now. And how could it be a cash grab if they made those choices. If they were willing to take the risks, as you mentioned before, Steve.
Actually, a good point, I think. Yes, sir. I was thinking about your question before, and I was like, yeah, I honestly feel like all their remakes, like just the fact that they're remaking stuff is cash grabby. I think a lot of us have been looking forward to more original stuff from Disney, or at least more investment in the original stories, rather than just the remakes. But then what you're saying, Chris, I think is a good point too. Like it's a different perspective, especially thinking about like TV shows and stuff like that take comic book characters, for example, and then make them into TV shows. Now I know like I'm a big Flash fan, and I know like when they cast Iris West as a Black woman, there was a lot of backlash about that too. And I was always thinking about it like, well, these characters existed like, I don't know, 60s, 50s, maybe America, where the people who are creating the stories only knew one kind of life. This is what I know. This is what I'm going to make. And then now that you grow as a brand and you're more global and the country grows, the world grows, and everybody becomes more interconnected, then when you are creating stories for a more global audience, especially if you want to retell it, so the fact that you're retelling the story in 2023, I think then you kind of have to take that into account of who you're telling the story to. So yeah, I see that perspective too, and I think you're right. There is risk in that because we're also saying, I don't know if this is really true, but I'm saying like it's not doing so well abroad because people are, I don't know what's going on, but it's like there's
Yeah.
that thing of Disney isn't really making as much money as they could be if they went in a different direction.
Yeah, the notable story on that is that, particularly what they said, Korea and Asia, the movie's pretty much dead on arrival and it's getting crushed, and they're attributing it to the backlash of Halle Bailey in the lead role.
You see that's a really interesting point, and I've been thinking a lot about this in terms of this film, but not just this film, where we're sort of at in our storytelling. And I think there are times, I'm not gonna lie, I think there are times when a character change uh shouldn't be done because it's not part of the character you're trying to tell. So for example, with James Bond, part of the conversation is who can it be, and then the conversation is shouldn't it be a woman. And it was Daniel Craig made an interesting point saying James Bond, it intrinsic to his character is this conversation around masculinity. So you can't just make him a woman. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Jane Bond. Now Superman, he grew up in Kansas, but he wasn't from a white family. There's no reason that his ethnicity is necessarily tied to his story in that way. In fact, it could make an interesting news story, like when they did the Red Sun storyline. I think it was called, when he grew up in communist Russia. To change that element changes who he is.
Well, put a pin in that one if they ever finish the Ta-Nehisi Coates Michael B. Jordan one they're working on.
Yes. Now, could he be Clark Kent? I think he could. Does he have to be a different character? No, I don't think he does. I think
He would
Clark
be
Kent could be a black
like
character.
Michael B. Jordan as Clark Kent would be something else, because that's a whole nother element of disappearing act that comes into the mix.
Yeah.
If I'm just blunt and honest with you.
Yeah, and that's exactly my point. It's like, but the character of Clark Kent, it's not necessitated race in that particular way.
Mm-hmm.
With Ariel, she's a mermaid. Like,
But to that point, before you even go there, the detractors and the haters start going back to Hans Christian Andersen.
in what way? Which,
their
by the way, it
whole,
was fascinating that they opened with a Hans Christian Andersen quote. I was like, that is dark way to end to begin. Anyway, go on, finish your thought.
I mean, Hans Christian Andersen wrote the original story
Yes, but
because, and so maybe they're assuming that if it's a white writer, then they're already making assumptions that the character is that. And so I'm just speaking for them out loud, spitballing. Maybe they're saying that they're compromising the vision of the original writer by going this route. I don't know.
well,
I'm
in Hans
guessing.
Christian. Oh, I'm sorry, Chris. I thought you were done. You can finish your
I just
thought.
said I'm guessing.
Well, in the original Hans Christian Andersen, when she gets her feet, I believe it describes every step she takes as though she had nails pinning, or she was stepping on nails. So these Hans, they already took creative licensing when they make this. Like the Frozen was adapted from a Hans Christian Andersen. It has nothing to do with Hans Christian Andersen. But see, this is what I'm saying. Nostalgia can be a killer. And this type of story. So we see. Well, Ariel didn't look like that when I was 10. So what have they done? But they haven't done anything because it's not necessary to the character for any particular
Well,
race.
they did, but they didn't. They did, but they didn't.
What do you mean?
Story's still the same. The heroes, the villains are still the same. None of that's ever changed. You're exactly right on that point. But what they did, again, was in the restructuring and in the recentering. The trailer that's run before the film starts, at least in my theater, was for the next upcoming Disney animated property, which is supposed to be called Wish. And in that trailer, they talk about from studio who brought you, and they list 6 of the 12,000 titles. Comes a story a century in the making. And I start thinking about that. As I'm watching this. For an entire century, every time this story has been told, who has been the main players? Every single time. Every single time. Every single time. With the exception of Encanto and Coco and other stories here and there. But when you go to the classic lexicon of or iconography of Disney stories, who's always been the center? Get ready, Steve. They're going to call Screenfish Woke after this. White people, white characters, top to bottom, up and down, everything in between. An exception over here and an exception over there. So every time mainstream audiences have gone to see animated storytellers about human beings, who have they seen? Someone who represents that mainstream image. But again, now you have it flipped. So it's the same classic story, like you're saying, but now we're presenting this particular story, and it's not us in the center. And from their perspective, I would imagine, and the only time you see us is in the guise of the hero and the guys on the ship at the beginning dancing, trying to catch the mermaid, but actually it's a dolphin. And then the ship shipwrecks, and you don't see us anymore for the whole rest of the story. I would imagine that would be a little crazy. When you were so used to seeing yourself, your image, your likeness portrayed as the center of every one of these stories, and now you're not. I can celebrate. I would imagine Shane, you're celebrating because you're like, yeah, right on. Other people probably are struggling. That's all I'll say.
Right. And I mean, I can see that. I agree with you. What drives me nuts though in these not in these conversations, but when people express their frustration about it, is this is such a healthy change. Like this is
Yeah,
it doesn't negatively affect the story or the character because but it actually gives it new life and share it almost actually and again maybe I don't know. I want to hear what Shay thinks about this, but I feel like it's sharing the story that we've been told in a different way with everybody.
that's the thing with everybody.
Shay, what do you think about all this? You wrote it. You wrote about it for us. You did a great
Yes.
review.
It's interesting because I told somebody the reason I like this film isn't because there's a Black lead in it. Like I don't necessarily think it's not the first thing that drew me to the film, if that makes sense. Like I that's an included thing, but it's not the primary thing. And I always think about this. It's I don't know. It's very strange because I grew up like in Nigeria with Nigeria is predominantly Black. All of us are Black. But I grew up watching all the Disney stuff. So all the Little Mermaids, Pocahontas, Cinderella, all of them. And I never noticed, and this might be because I didn't have any reference point for other races around me, but I never noticed that the characters were different from me, really. I was just like, oh, that's a girl. I'm a girl too. And that was just it. I think it's moving here that I'm beginning to understand the impact of that on other people who have a different relationship to race than I did growing up. So yeah, but I really liked like the cultural infusion. Is that the word? Like the infusion of culture into this movie. I thought it made it more interesting. So things like setting it even in like a Caribbean location as opposed to in Europe and making Eric adopted. I know some people were angry about that too, but I thought it was very interesting. And I thought it was, again, when you're thinking of retelling the story in 2023, you're thinking of who your audience is. I think that's a good way to reinvent it and make it more relatable for people who'll be watching it. So yeah, I really like that too about it.
Are you ready for the theories? Because there's going to be theories.
Mm.
Well, I'm preparing for 6 months from now, or even 6 weeks from now, when TikTok says that Eric is actually the long lost
Oh,
brother of Elsa and Anna because the parents were on the ship and it crashed. And that's it's all connected. It's all
oh,
connected.
it had to be like a live action Disney. Well, I don't know. We'll see.
um, that's no, but that's interesting. Yeah, it's so even though it's funny, like we talk about Halle Bailey, and I know Chris wanted to talk about this, but all the mermaids are from everywhere. And Trident, I have to say, having oh forgive me, what's his name playing King Triton?
Javier Bardem, I said
Javier
that
Bardem.
like a couple of minutes ago.
Yeah. I had to laugh because whenever I see Bardem, there's always a small part of me that hears him saying, "Hello, friendo," like
Call it friendo.
call it friendo. And I'm like, oh man, I didn't realize that King Triton has a dark edge. But I mean, he had Like all of his daughters are from everywhere.
Like I said, that was a Disney move, I think.
Well, you want to talk about the finale, so why don't you? What was it you were going to say about the finale, Chris?
Pretty much said about the finale what I said about the whole entire thing. I think that was such a statement. And I really think the film as a whole was just a huge, large, and sweeping statement because the whole crux of it is, can the world of the sea and the world of the land coexist, come together, and live together? Which is kind of where we're at in the world. Can these different worlds, can these different factions over here come together and share space and live together? And the notion from the patriarchy and the matriarchy, who was steeped and dwelled in the past, and saying, no, we can't. It just ain't gonna work. So now the next generation says, nope, let's come together. Because even Eric's whole backstory is he's not just on these ships relunking to trade to gain treasure. He's not trying to be his own version of Jack Sparrow. He's trying to go explore the world to see how he can bring the world into his community to try to make a difference. I think he mentions that he's exploring ways to try to impact health in other aspects of that community. And his mom's trying to keep him grounded and saying, nope, your responsibility is here to just prepare to be the king when, he's like, nah, I want more than that. And look at Ariel with King Triton going back and forth, there's a whole world out there and her belief that they're not a threat. Somehow we can bridge these two communities. And in that final moment of the film, when you see these two communities finally pop up, the mer people coming up out of the water, and it's every creed, it's every color, it's every face imaginable, merging in the people of the land as he just saw them go. I'm just sitting there like, wow, this is the future. This is where we are trying to go. This is the direction that I believe if we can make this work and find a way to bridge all these different pieces of connected tissue, this is where we're headed. And when you look at Disney's company battle that's happening in Florida, you have that sector who's saying, nope, we need to revert back to the past, to where we push away and isolate because these outside forces are a threat to us. So let's ban stuff. Let's not use certain descriptors of people and individuals now. Because if we make them part of our world, they're going to corrupt us. They're going to denigrate us. They're going to drag us down. But I don't believe that's the case. If we include, if we draw in, if we embrace, which by the way is our Christ-like duty last time I checked, what kind of world could we have? What kind of people could we be? And that last image to me was just a striking and overwhelming sense of hope as I saw it, and it's like, whoa, I have to speak on this. I have to speak on this. Sorry I didn't write you a review, but I did have to speak on this. This is more fun than writing, by the way.
It is.
Because you gave me, well, Yeah, I won't self publicize, but yeah, but I know I had to speak on it.
Well, I like what you're saying. I like what you're saying here. To me, it was a party movie that everybody was invited to, and I think that it was sort of really everybody was invited. It wasn't one person's party and said, "Oh well, if you," it was just everybody's party. But one of the lines that they added that I thought was really interesting is, "You shouldn't have to give up your voice to be heard." I was wondering, to you both, what you think, why was that line so important to be included? I mean, they had 45 minutes, so they had a whole lot of lines that were included in this thing, but that one really stuck out as, they really sort of hit that one. Why do you think that one was such an important one for this particular film? I forget who says it. I'm going to look that up.
That's King Triton at the end of the
That's
film
right.
as he sends them off to their journey. After all that's happened, he's seen the error of his ways, and that was his mea culpa. I'm intentionally yielding to you, Shay, because I've been talking
I
for
have
the last 10
no
minutes.
thoughts about that actually. To be
It
like,
meant nothing.
it, I think like the only thing I can think of, and I don't know if somebody else has something else to say, but like I think that first of all, like when I heard the line in the movie, it sounded like it was kind of like a piece of advice to the audience, especially if they're young kids watching. But I'm trying to think of what it would look like to give up your voice to be heard, and I don't know how exactly. Um,
Oh, I got an answer. Steve's
okay.
gonna get in trouble, but I got an answer.
I'm going to get in trouble?
Again, they're gonna call Screenfish woke because of this podcast. You're gonna get canceled.
Oh, Chris, no one watches this. No.
Whatever, dude. When you start talking about the litany of the African American experience, our sisters who are fighting to retain their rights in this country, our LGBTQ brothers and sisters who are fighting for their rights. How many times have all of us, people of color, in so many different marginalized groups, have been told, give up your voice, fit in, play the role, be silent, even in the Christian community, give up your voice, just play the role, do the dance, assimilate, and everything will be all right. Because of what happened in America 3 years ago at this time, I had to leave the church because I didn't use my voice the whole first 3 years I was at this church to really speak about my experiences as a black man in America. I didn't use my voice. I was silent and I just played the role. I went to church, I shook hands, I hugged people, knowing that they really did not understand my fears of being a black man living in Texas before George Floyd. Then all that happens. I use my voice, I speak my voice. I lost friendships, I lost the church, I lost brotherhood, I lost sisterhood, and I had to go get whisked into a whole new world of people who gave me the space and the place to where my voice could be spoken and I could be heard. Again, not just centering us as Black people. How many women have had their voices silent because of their support for their rights? Think of our brothers and sisters who could not come out to their families and their communities because they felt they had to bottle that in close and hold that secret to be silent. And once they lifted up their voice to be heard and say, "This is who I am," think of all the losses that they have taken. Being ostracized, being put out of churches, being put out of families. That's what I think of when I hear that line.
Then I think that's like there's some irony in there with the quote itself, because like saying you don't have to give up your voice to be heard. If you give up your voice, you're not going to be heard anyway. Do you know what I mean? Like what you're saying, Chris, about people saying, oh, like keep your voice down or don't say anything and then everything will be fine. There's still not hearing you if you don't say anything. So there's that thing of like, yeah, like I don't think there's
That's
any
literally what happened to, Ariel in the film.
right.
Her whole thing is her voice.
Right.
Yeah, that's the one thing that will identify to Eric, baby, it's you. And she lost that. And King Triton saying at the end, this man is the love of your life, clearly evident, boom. You should not have had to sacrifice and surrender your voice for this man to see you, know you, and love you. That is the world that we created that put you in this position in the first place. It never shouldn't have happened. This is a fairy tale love story. But how many times have we seen derivatives and variants of that in our world?
I'll even take it one step further. I think that to me, that line speaks as much to the changes in Kiss the Girl as it does to the rest of the film. Because some of these subtle changes are designed to empower Ariel's character, but also like we also talked about the racial spreading, of course, and throughout the film. But I mean, the changes to Kiss the Girl are subtle, but they wanted to make it less. Hey, man, just go in, just kiss her, just do it, and make it more consensual, and try and empower that moment. And even their relationship is empowered more in this one. It's more brought to
Talk about
light.
that. That's like my main focus of this movie, to be honest.
Yeah.
Their relationship. Yeah, because when I watched it, this is the reason I think why I like this film is because I'm a big fan of the original Eric, and I think even like there's a big thing that they changed in this film, but something he did in the original where he kills Ursula. And when I was growing up, I was like, oh, like he was my favorite Disney prince because of that, because I thought the others just didn't do anything, and I was like, they're just there, but like Eric is active. And they changed that in this film. When I watched this film, and it didn't bother me because I think the way the story played out made sense to the story. But I like that they brought Ariel and Eric on this kind of like equal playing field where they both have the same interests, but also like they understand something about a world that the other doesn't, if that makes sense. So Ariel knows what's going on underwater. Eric knows what goes on land, but he wants to kind of go towards the ocean and she wants to come up on land. So they both have something to offer the other, and they are able to learn from each other, which I like. For me, that was the biggest thing. I was like, oh, this is good, I think, to see, and for kids to even see like this is what like a real partnership is. So that was a big thing for me. And sorry, I'll say this also because I've heard people speaking about how they took away Eric's agency and they made him like a doormat or whatever. I don't know. I don't
Really?
think
I didn't
that's the
see that.
case. I know. I don't think that's the case. I was thinking about that too. I was like, I think there's this thing of like, oh no, the man has to be the hero because that's what men do. I don't know. And
Oh,
I think
they're saying they're mad because Eric wasn't your traditional chisel-jawed alpha male Disney hero.
because Ariel is the one who kills Ursula in this one instead of Eric. You're like, oh, she saved him twice. And he's supposed to save her the second time. That kind of like discussion. But like I think we're missing if we think about like masculinity and like heroism as those big moments of like, I don't know, something big like murder. I don't know, like defense. Sorry. Um, and we miss like the little moments where like I think like Eric is being a good leader and like he's listening to his people and taking care of them. There's things like that I think are good personality traits to have as someone who is a leader, as someone who is in charge, that some people overlook because it doesn't seem as strong. And I think I like that they made Eric this way in this film, where I think he's a leader and he's the one who cares about the people he's taking care of, and that's strong enough. And it's okay that Ariel saves him twice. It doesn't make him less strong. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
You know, I'll speak to that too because in I would suggest that in most Disney princess films, not Disney films, Disney princess films, the prince is kind of a silent chump who does the killing and has no personality anyway, especially the early ones. Like what personality does Prince Charming have in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs? He doesn't. He just kills, kills the witch or whatever. If I remember, I can't remember
Doesn't
how
even
it
do
actually
anything.
didn't. Oh no, she falls off a cliff, but he kills
He doesn't do anything.
Prince. The prince kills Maleficent in Sleeping Beauty. But
He was
again,
my
like
second favorite because of that. Prince Philip. I liked Eric and Philip because they did something.
yeah, but like that's what they do. They don't say anything and they're there, they're the men, and then they so you know, men are mostly chumps, violent chumps. And I thought in this one, I thought Eric was a pretty fleshed out, you know, 20 something prince who had some positive goals. I thought, you know what, I'm on board with this guy. um, but it's funny, like what you're saying there, Shay. I think says as much about giving voice as we've said before. In some ways of what we said before, because I think Ariel speaks up for herself in so many ways and is valued for those reasons. Like she's highly intelligent and she's valued for that. I mean, whereas in the original, and again, I don't know the original inside and out. I've seen it multiple times, but I couldn't, you know, remember it chapter and verse. But Ariel, and to my best of my knowledge, is she washes up on shore, has dinner with the family, and then kiss the girl, and then Ursula shows up, and it's sort of like, oh, she's the well, and they cut out the line that says you'll still have your don't underestimate the power of body language, and I thought, dang, they really are hitting home on the positive aspects of womanhood, empowering. That's an important line to drop to me. And I love that line in the original because the way she hits it, the way Ursula hits that line is just fantastic. But they drop it intentionally from this film. And I think, from everything you were saying before, Chris, and everything you're saying, Shay, I think to me that's what really hit with the line, because you shouldn't have to give up your voice to be heard. I think there's so many different ways that characters in this film are given a voice. um and Ariel communicates so well without being able to speak in this version, whereas in the original it's a major hindrance. It's just like it's a big deal. um
The neat part about that, the more that I think about it, as you guys talked about it, it made him earn her love. He didn't just show up, and there she was, and I'm the man. Look at me. You want to kiss me? Oh, it wasn't that kind of party at all. That whole day that they spent together was a courtship. Was a courtship. In real life, that would have been spread out over the course of a few weeks, but they crammed it all in a day because we've only got 2 hours, 15 minutes of run time before they got a sweet popcorn. But yeah, this was love that had to be earned, which in retrospect kind of makes it fall flat and seem not really believable that he would just drop Ariel because he heard the siren song.
But I even have a thing about that because
Okay.
you can tell I'm a bit obsessed. When I watched it the second time, when Vanessa, that's her name, Ursula's human form, when she's like at the party, they have the engagement stuff. Eric is walking around looking for Ariel, and I'm like, this man is under
Yeah.
the spell. He's still like, have you seen Ariel? And I think I'm like, that's true though. He's like, his heart is still calling for her. But yeah, I think in his like subconscious, he was still like, no, I still like Ariel.
Well,
That
and
would have been a greater ending if it came to show the ring and he was like, you know what? It's something about you. I just can't. I'm in love with Ariel. That would have been a greater that would have been a greater take, and then Ursula just would have kind of went postal and revealed herself, and then that would have been a bolder take than just the cat fight, rip off the brooch, and then she gets her siren back.
Mm-hmm.
So hindsight's 2020, and what are film critics nothing but armchair movie directors.
this is a great play. I'm loving this conversation. I think it's fantastic, but I think it may be time to screen it or skip it. So, The Little Mermaid, 2023, screen it or skip it.
Screen it. But I was gonna say, depending on who you are, I don't know if that makes sense. I think some people will like this more than other people, and it is a kids movie, but I really loved it, so screen it.
Who are the people that shouldn't go see? No kidding.
No, not shouldn't, but I think like there's guys. I don't know. I always just imagine some like guys being like, I don't care. I don't know.
It's a fair comment. It's a fair comment.
For every beautiful young black feminine child, for any child of color who believes in their heart that they are a princess, who brought all the movies, who brought all the princess Disney princess garb and play dress up, imagining that they were one of those heralded Disney princesses. Screen it, if for no other reason to say, this is your time, this is your moment to see yourself. Screen it.
But I will say, and this to me is the highest compliment I can give it, if you are a fan of The Little Mermaid, it is absolutely worth a screen it because it's quality, and it's a quality. I mean, I expected that the music would be good. I heard Halle Bailey on a few clips before it came out. I expected some of the visuals would be good. I didn't think, but I thought that it was a film that lived up to the legacy of the original and charted a bit of a new one. And which I think is what makes these things work. If Disney's gonna give us the same ones, they've got to give something to it that really makes it hit. And I think this one hits. I really say that with love and affection. I think it's very well done.
I want to see a sequel of like Eric and Ariel exploring the oceans. On the ship.
You want to see them run into Moana, and the crossovers begin. That's
Talk
it's
about your cash grabs.
the Disney live action cinematic universe.
Yep.
Coming.
Totally.
Lilo and Ariel.
Well,
Chris,
Wreck-It Ralph intimated that Wreck-It Ralph, the second one, when they had the princess sleepover. So there you go. That's your template.
thank you both so much. I love our conversations. I appreciate you both, and I really appreciate you chatting with me on this one.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Anytime. Our next episode, which I don't have an exact date for it yet, but it will be episode 200. I'm very proud of this. I'm very excited. I mean, it's not like it's our 200th podcast, because we've done lots of interviews and that, but it's our 200th Screenfish Radio. I remember the first one we ever did was for Age of Ultron, and we didn't know if it was going to last 10 episodes. And here we are, 200. So and for episode 200, we're gonna switch things up a little bit, and we're gonna talk about legacy Batman films. Batman from the 90s, with some friends of the podcast. So it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a fun one. But as always, you can find us wherever podcasts are available. You can find us on Apple, Google, iHeartRadio, wherever you want to look for us. Look up Screenfish, you will find us. If you can find us on YouTube, like and subscribe to us on YouTube. And if you go to the podcast page at screenfish.net, you can download Fishing for More, which are some small group questions to help you get the conversation started where you are. Shay, Chris, thank you once again. And for you at home, we started the conversation. This was Screenfish.